You're listening to Leader Tribe, where leaders are made daily, but never in a day. We're talking skills that are relevant, researched, and ready for action. Apply these and you will grow. Here's your daily dose of growth with Dr. Rob McClelland.
Hello, Leader Tribers. How in the world are you? Hey, I've never started off with that kind of long hello, Leader Tribers. So there you go. Dr. Rob in the studio in Atlanta. If you've been listening recently, you understand that I am going through a series that I did with some leaders in Oroville, California. I recorded several of those episodes ahead of time, and now I've returned from that. I'm still continuing to record. And in those other episodes, I said, here's what we're going to do, because of course I'd had it all planned out in advance and my PowerPoint sent it all in. And we did most of that. There's a couple of things that I touched on less than others, or less time than I had originally intended, because of the great questions that were asked and trying to make sure that this was a custom training for the people who were in the room. Anyway, on a 1 to 10, I thought it went like a 12 or a 14. It was so much fun, super, super responsive people. And I am so thankful to have made some new friends in my hometown of Oroville and to provide some really good training for them. Having said that, we're going to continue this week. We're going to actually wrap it up. Remember, the first half of the day, or the first half of my time with them, the first 2 hours, I was just doing it on personal leadership development. You can listen to the last 2 weeks of episodes on that. And then the second 2 hours, the final 2 hours, I was with them learning, talking about team-based leadership, building a great team. How do you have the best team possible? How do you take the team that you have and turn them into champions? We all know that there's some teams out there that work fantastic together and some that don't. By far, the best thing ever done on having healthy organizations, healthy teams, was done by Patrick Lencioni. And that had to do originally with the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and then his follow-up book, The Advantage. If you would like me to send you a executive summary of 5 Dysfunctions of a Team or the book, The Advantage, just hit me up, rob@leadertribe.com. That's rob@leadertribe.com with an email. Say that you listened to the podcast and you'd like an executive summary of those 2 books, and I will get one out to you right away. But here's what we're going to do today, tomorrow, and the rest of this week. I'm just going to get started today with the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, specifically the way I taught it there. This is what Patrick Lencioni is known for, but this week, first time ever, this is in the episodes, just over 400 episodes of the Leader Tribe podcast now. This week, we're starting with episode 401. So 400 episodes in, for the first time ever, this week, I am going to play an interview where I actually interviewed somebody else. Now, this is why this is so crazy, because I had expected this podcast to be an interview podcast where I was interviewing some of the big name, big people leaders out there and playing that for you and then talking about the interviews. But instead, it turned into me just doing teaching and training on different things. And so I don't know where this podcast is going, but I recorded this interview with Patrick Lencioni 2 years ago, and I was doing it right at the very, very beginning when I was planning on having this be an interview podcast. So I thought, I'll get Patrick Lencioni and John Maxwell and a couple other biggies that were out there sort of in that leadership development and team development world. And then I would start playing those interviews. Did not end up going that way for a number of reasons. I certainly could have, but it's turned into more of me doing personal training and doing it more research-based than just interview-based. That changes this week. What? I mean, seriously, come on. Yeah, that's true. Friends, Wednesday and Thursday of this week, I'm going to play that original interview that I had done here in Atlanta with Patrick Lencioni. I got to spend a day with him. He was out here at a John Maxwell event doing some speaking, and I got to be the person to take care of him and hang out with him for a couple of days. And so on one of those days, as our friendship had grown, he did a podcast interview with me. We're going to play that on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. Okay, with all of that introduction, I'm going to spend a few moments here just kind of prefacing the 5 dysfunctions of a team. We'll pick that up tomorrow, and then Wednesday and Thursday, Patrick Lencioni, my first ever interview. And so all you people are going to say, that was fantastic. You should do more interviews. And if I hear that over and over again, then I will do it. I have heard it by some people already, but they were just saying, here's ways that you could probably improve your podcast at least once a week. I get emails from people who say, hey, I want to be on the podcast, or my boss would be great to be on the podcast. And it's usually people who just want to sell their wares or talk about a book that they've written to get it out there. And so I've chosen not to do it because I want everything here to be research-based. So friends, are you ready? 5 dysfunctions of a team. There are 5 areas where your team gets upended, loses traction, and where you do not get the best out of people. I'm just going to go over those areas really quickly, and we'll spend the bulk of our time tomorrow when we talk about that, specifically talking about the area of trust. If you've listened to the Leader Tribe podcast or read the blogs, you know trust is a huge area here. I'm one of the people in the world who's done the most work in that area, certainly spoke on it way more than most people at university forums and other things. And so trust is super important, but it's a specific kind of trust. So let's go over these quickly. Tomorrow we will jump right in. Okay, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. These are 5 things that go wrong with a team. Number 1, the base of the big pyramid. And you can go to tablegroup.com, and you get a bunch of free downloads, free PDFs that have this pyramid that I'm talking about. The base of the pyramid, number 1 dysfunction is the absence of trust. I was going to say all the rest of it doesn't matter. It matters, but if you don't get this one right, you're never going to have the best team. So what do they mean by absence of trust and what we can do about that? We'll talk about that more tomorrow. The next step up on the pyramid, though, is the fear of conflict, the fear of healthy conflict. Hey, I don't want to get into an argument about this. Are you kidding me? If it's an important matter, you should argue about it. But if you don't trust each other, you're not going to have a healthy argument about it. Dysfunction number 3, the lack of commitment. If you haven't been able to duke it out with each other and really find out what each other are thinking and feeling, then you are not going to be totally committed to the solution and to each other. The 4th dysfunction would be the avoidance of accountability. If you don't know exactly what that commitment is from step 3, then there's no way you're going to be held accountable to it in step 4. And then the final dysfunction of the team is inattention to results. If you can't hold each other accountable, there's no way you are going to get the results that you set out to give, unless it's by accident, and that won't happen more than once. Okay, friends, that's it. That's the 5 dysfunctions of a team. We're going to jump in on that tomorrow. Today, just a lot of background, what's going on, and announcing the first ever interview in the history of Leader Tribe. That will be Wednesday and Thursday of this week. Until then, much love. I'm out. Hello, Leader Tribers. Dr. Rob in Atlanta. Hope you're doing fantastic. Life is good. Today we are learning about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. This is something I went over with the leaders in Oroville, California that I was meeting with. Specifically, I have purchased from the Table Group website the videos that go along with this, and I showed about a half-hour video. I think the purchase price on that was $500 or $600. I can't remember. And so this is not something you would do if you just have a business, but it's something as a consultant that I do when I go out and I help businesses work with their teams. Having said that, one of the great opportunities that I have are just explaining the concepts of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. We're going to go into those today on the Leader Tribe podcast. So we briefly covered these yesterday. Today, here's what we're going to do. Dysfunction number 1, the absence of trust. Trust lies at the very heart of any team that's going to function well together. Without a level of trust, and this is not just trust that Patrick Lencioni would call predictive trust, like, hey, I know this guy, I know how he acts, I know he always comes through. You can predict his behavior based on your trust. It's not that at all. It's the kind of trust that he calls vulnerability-based trust. Vulnerability-based trust was hit really hard in Kouzes and Posner's book, The Truth About Leadership. They did an entire chapter on trust and talked a ton about vulnerability-based trust. Vulnerability-based trust says, I am willing to share with you not only who I am, but my failures, my insecurities, not in some weird way, but just saying, hey guys, as we work together on this, the opportunity we have here is incredible, but there's no chance we're going to go all in unless we really can trust each other. And that's scary to me because I've led teams like this in the past that haven't done as well. Now, I've also had some incredible successes as well, but I found out that some of those failures, those were actually my fault. And so I'd like to comment on a couple of, when you do something like that, when you can be that vulnerable, other people will trust you more because they know that you are not trying to hide something. And so if you're going to do that, Patrick Lencioni recommends one of the very first things that you can do is do a personal histories exercise. This is a free download they have again at tablegroup.com, but it's low risk. You're just asking people in your family, where were you in the birth order? Where did you grow up? And then what was one of the challenges you had to overcome as a kid? Just sharing at that level, you're going to learn things about each other and it's going to become more and more normal to be able to share. If you will go back over to leadertribe.com, find the search mechanism and put in there vulnerability-based questions. I've done questions. There's free downloads in there of a bunch of personal history, vulnerability-based questions that you can ask. I don't start meetings with teams I lead without some type of question to get us ready to be vulnerable with each other. Dysfunction number 2 is the fear of conflict. I can't jump there too early. Why? Because if you don't have trust, you're always going to have a fear of conflict. If I don't have trust on a team that I'm on, then there's no chance that I'm going to be willing to get in there and argue something out. What I'm going to do, instead of fear of conflict, I'm going to avoid conflict. I'm just going to say, yeah, that sounds great to me. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. But then when it comes time to actually implementing that and doing all the hard work, I am not going to give it my full level of commitment because I'm not totally dedicated to it. Why not? Because I didn't get to share some of the ways that I thought this might not work or some of the things that we hadn't thought of. It's only when everybody can jump in fully and get over this fear of conflict, but just jump right into the middle of the conflict, be super, super honest with each other. That is where you can overcome that fear of conflict, but you can't do that without trust. But if you can't overcome that type of conflict, there's no chance you can go to the next level, and that has to do with our commitment. Usually when I talk to teams, even in large corporate settings, and I see that this particular team, that they don't follow through on their commitments, I never think, wow, they need to be more committed. I've never thought that. You know what I think? Wow, they don't have good conflict. They don't have healthy, truth-telling type of conflict. And the reason they don't do that is because they don't trust each other. So lack of commitment is never about commitment. It's about the basis or the foundation that was built previous to that. And so lack of commitment comes when you have not had the opportunity to have that trust built up so that you can have good conflict. If I haven't had good conflict, then when I commit to something, it's a very shallow level of commitment. All of a sudden, we're going to go for sort of consensus. Yes, we all agree on this. Great, let's move forward. And we all say that we agree on it, but we're not going to have the hard conversations. When we're challenged on it, we're not going to defend it. We're not going to go back to our teams and say, look, this is how it is, because we've just sort of got consensus, but we haven't done the hard work that is necessary in order to have full-on commitment. Well, when you don't have full-on commitment, you're going to have the next dysfunction of a team, and that is the avoidance of accountability. Here's what happens in that realm. If I am going to hold somebody else accountable, I've got to know exactly what it is that they committed to, what I committed to, and then to be able to say, hey, you know what? We all talked about this. We committed to it, but I don't see this part happening. So what's going on there? Do you need some help? If I'm going to call them on it, if I'm going to hold somebody accountable, it's because I have, in fact, understood exactly what that commitment was. Now you see why commitment is so important, and you don't get a commitment if you don't have healthy conflict and good trust. You can see how these build on each other. So the avoidance of accountability, this is the number one out of all of the dysfunctions, the number one issue that you see in most teams, in most corporate settings for sure. We'll say, hey, here's our goals, here's our standards. We're going to make progress towards these. Did you get your work done? Well, yeah, I had some conversations, but did you do what you said you would do or not? And the answer is they usually don't. Why? Because the commitment wasn't made clear, and so they don't want to be held accountable. They're going to say, well, I don't really understand exactly what we're doing here or what we said we would do, and I know that we wrote this down. They're going to make up excuses. And if you avoid accountability, then the last dysfunction, and this is the last one that I talked about in the group that I was with in Oroville, is inattention to results. If you're not going to be held accountable yourself, and if you're not going to hold your other teammates accountable, there's no chance that you're going to get the results that you could have had and that you should have had and that you said that you wanted. But inattention to results happens when you can't hold each other accountable. And so we're all on a team. Hey, we missed our goals again this year. We missed them last year and the year before that and the year before that. And the reason we keep missing this is because we're not working as a team. We're working as individuals, working together, doing the best we can, but also protecting ourselves and being defensive. Friends, when you get to the place where you don't have to protect yourself, you don't have to be defensive because you trust each other, magic happens. And so that is, in fact, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Again, if you would like an executive book summary on that to go through this yourself, just hit me up with an email, rob@leadertribe.com. That's rob@leadertribe.com, and say, hey, Dr. Rob, how's it going? Listen to the podcast. Please send me the executive summary of either 5 dysfunctions of a team or the book, The Advantage, and I will make sure to get that out to you. Now, that is it for today, but tomorrow, the first ever interview podcast in the history of Leader Tribe, episode number 403, and it's the first time we've done an interview. Who's it going to be with? Patrick Lencioni himself. That interview will be part 1 tomorrow on Wednesday, and then part 2 on Thursday. More about that tomorrow. Until then, much love. I'm out. Hello, friends. Welcome to Leader Tribe. This is Dr. Rob. I want to tell you what's going on. I recorded a live interview with Patrick Lencioni, but this was the first time I had ever tried to record an interview. As a result, the microphones were bad, they weren't placed right, and the recording was terrible. Actually, the good news, Patrick's recording was pretty good. The microphone that I was on, the recording was terrible. And so what I did is I went back over this recording and I re-recorded myself asking the same questions, making the exact same comments as I did in the interview, and then dubbing them over the original. So the sound's going to be a little weird on this one. Don't worry about it. Just listen to the interview. This is the first ever interview ever heard on the Leader Tribe podcast. Part 1 today, Patrick Lencioni. Are you ready? Here we go.
Hi, this is Patrick Lencioni, and you're listening to Leader Tribe.
You're listening to Leader Tribe, where leaders are made daily, but never in a day. We're talking skills that are relevant, researched, and ready for action. Apply these and you will grow. Here's your daily dose of growth with Dr. Rob McClelland.
Hello, Leader Tribe. It is a great day today. Get to do a live interview, person to person, with Patrick Lencioni. You might have called him Patrick Lencioni. Lots of books. I reference him all the time. The best writer out there when it comes to organizational leadership. Absolutely love this guy. Hey, Patrick, thanks for being here today.
It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here. It's fun.
Pat, most people here are going to know you from your books. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is one of your biggest. Obviously, your book, The Advantage, your first one that wasn't a leadership fable, has just swept the market. I mean, it's being used in every kind of organization out there. 2 of my favorites from before that, not only 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, but Death by Meeting and Getting Naked. One book that most people might not know about is you wrote a book about the family, and it's called The Frantic Family. really helpful for those people who are in the business world and they have busy lives and they're trying to raise a good family. Wonderful. Let's talk about your family. Tell us about them.
Well, my wife and I have been married for almost 25 years, and we've got four kids at home. How did I miss one of them? Maybe because I have a set of twins.
Okay, there you go.
Unfortunately, we grouped them together.
Yeah.
So I have some twins getting ready to go to college next year, which is crazy, and I've got a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, all boys.
Wow.
And so life is crazy and wonderful and messy, and it's just a wonderful thing.
For those people who know you from speaking engagements or know you from reading your books, they might not know about the Table Group, your full-time company. Tell us about the Table Group.
Sure. The Table Group is all about helping organizations become more effective or healthy. And we do that through teamwork and through clarity and working with executive teams in all different kind of industries. We've got 30 consultants around the world that do our stuff. And so that's what we do. A lot of people think I just write and give speeches, but I do a lot of consulting and I manage the team, and we have all kinds of different products to help people implement this in their organizations. And we just literally love to help. We don't do a lot of selling, and we're not about ourselves. We really like to champion the organizations we work with, but that's what we do. And there's 9 of us in our headquarter office, and most of us have worked there for 15 years or more, and it's like a big family.
So it sounds like all of the organizational health principles that you talk about and write about, you get the opportunity to put them into practice as well.
We actually do. It's tough to promote it if you don't practice it.
Amen.
And it's messy, though. Mm-hmm. It's like a perfect family there's no such thing. It's a messy thing, and that's the way our company is, too.
You make a great point. There's no such thing as a perfect family, a perfect company. And if it is perfect, we shouldn't join it. It wouldn't be perfect anymore. Appreciate that. Hey, just as a reminder for everyone, one of the things that we try to do here at Leader Tribe is talk to some great leaders and ask them to be really vulnerable with us. Now, Patrick, you're the king of vulnerability. We appreciate that a great deal. So here's the question we'd like you to do is think of a time in your life where things were going pretty well for you. You seemed to be on track, but then something happened. Perhaps you got sidetracked a little bit, maybe did something that was dumb or something didn't work out the way that you thought it would. And all of a sudden you become a little insecure on the inside. You start to question yourself. And when that happens, perhaps you were headed for a promotion. You didn't get the promotion. Something was really disappointing in your life. Lots of leaders get there. No one talks about it. So what we like to do is say, someone like you, is there a time in your life that comes to mind? Would you share that with us? Then turn around and look back to that time and give yourself some advice from where you're sitting today. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
There's a very clear time. I've had a number of these, but I got out of college and I got the best job of anyone in my college. It was clear based on a book that was written and articles written. There was this one company that everybody said that's the number one place to work in America. There was a book about it. And I got that job, and everybody thought, including me, my life was set. Everybody, because when they recruit you, they're like, you're going to make all this money, you're going to change the world, you're going to do all this stuff as a management consultant. Well, of course they do that to recruit you, and they had a great PR department. But after being there for 2 years, and it didn't even take 2 years to realize it, I realized it wasn't for me, and that I wasn't great at it.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, what's going on? I got this great job and I thought my life was set. And now I'm not actually succeeding in this, and I don't feel like this is what I'm meant to do. I don't think that's what God really had intended for me. And fortunately, I had a couple people at that job who said, this one guy came alongside me and said, I think you're a diamond in the rough. I don't think this is for you, but you have really great potential. And then the partner at the firm, her name is Meg Whitman. She's now the CEO of Hewlett Packard. And she said, you would be a great partner. In other words, you're really good at the highest level of what we do, but you're not very good at the lowest level, which is like doing the actual analysis. And she was right, but it was really painful because I had to leave. And I thought, wow, what's going to happen?
Wow, did you hear that, friends? Hey, this is Dr. Rob again, back in the studio. That's where we're going to pick up tomorrow. Patrick gets super vulnerable about the fact that he had to go through this failure in life. He was going to be embarrassed with it because he got the coolest job out of everyone who was getting their MBA, how he processed that and what he thinks about that today. I asked him to get vulnerable about how he really feels and about the pain of it, and he does. That is where we're going to pick up tomorrow. Until then, much love. I'm out. Hey, Leader Tribers, if you were listening yesterday, you know that we are broadcasting for the first time ever in the history of Leader Tribe. After 400 episodes, we are broadcasting an interview. The interview is with Patrick Lencioni. Some of you know him as Patrick Lencioni or other things, but he pronounces it Lencioni, so I'm going to go with his interpretation of his own last name. Having said that, we listened to the first part tomorrow and we got right to the place where he's talking about some failure. So we're going to back that up a little bit, and then we will end the podcast today talking about, just for a second, kind of recapping what we heard. How fantastic is this? We have an opportunity to hear from the man himself. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Mr. Nicholas. He is in fact my sound guy who puts all this together for me, to go ahead and play the bumper music again and then get right into that podcast where it left off. Now, as I told you yesterday, this is a remix. It's a redubbed version because I didn't know what I was doing when I was recording this podcast. And so if the sound isn't good, please note, this was not Mr. Nicholas. Nicholas is awesome sound engineer. And so anything that's bad about this podcast, that was before I had ever met him and had the privilege of working with him. And so the bad sound on this has nothing to do with my incredible sound engineer, Nicholas, who has made me sound great for over a year now. So much love, Nicholas. And for the rest of you, here goes the second half of the interview with Patrick Lencioni.
This one guy came alongside me and said, I think you're a diamond in the rough. I don't think this is for you, but you have really great potential. And then the partner at the firm, her name is Meg Whitman. She's now the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. She said, you would be a great partner. In other words, you're really good at the highest level of what we do, but you're not very good at the lowest level, which is like doing the actual analysis. And she was right, but it was really painful because I had to leave. And I thought, wow, what's going to happen?
What was the internal discussion when you faced the pain of that situation?
Well, you know what it was? It was pride. And it was like other people knew I had landed at this firm, and it was a very competitive situation and very much kind of a privilege to work there. And to leave there meant that I was no longer on the trajectory I thought I was, at least not the way the world saw it. And so I had to struggle, but I struggled with a sense of passion. I remember I went and did the Myers-Briggs and I figured out what I love to do. And I did that book, What Color is My Parachute? And I said, I really like organizational stuff. I like the human side of business, but there was no career path that was clear. And so everybody was like, what are you doing now? And there weren't very impressive answers. And the problem was, if I was living for what other people thought of me in my career, I was never going to do the things I needed to do. So interestingly enough, I took a job at a company called Oracle, which nobody knew what that was, which was not a great place to work, but that's how I got into organizational work. And then I went to work at another company, and then I got to another place where I got confused because I became a vice president, and my dad, God rest his soul, was so proud of me. I had good benefits. I made better money than he did, and he was really proud of me. But then I said, this isn't for me either. I wanted to start my own consulting firm so I could work with other companies. And he was like, but you have benefits, and you're a vice president, and it looks really good. And I said, I know, but Dad, I have to do this, and I have to take these people with me to do this. And so we restarted again. And, both of those moments where I got to a point of frustration and I had to walk away from what the world said was the smartest decision, but do something that I thought was my passion that God put me on earth to do. Those were the two most important parts of my life. And yet it was turning away from pride and really pursuing what made sense for me, not for the world. And so the advice I have for others is, do not define your career, your success, your contribution based on what the world tells you to do, because that's a slowly diminishing marginal returns. Really figure out what you're put here to do and pursue that. And the joy that comes out of that is better than anything.
Well, Patrick, I just want to thank you for that level of authenticity with our listeners. Really incredible that you would share that. Thanks for your transparency. So you're at this place in life now. You're leaving Bain. Anybody else would have died to get that job, and now you're walking away from it. At that moment, if you had to, from today, look back and give yourself some advice, what would that advice be?
It would be vulnerable enough to know when you're not in the right place, and be comfortable enough to know that you can say, that's not an area of success for me, and realize that that's how we grow. I mean, up until that point, I'd never failed at anything. And I thought that was a badge of honor, and it was actually a very dangerous thing. Learn to fall on your face and stand up in front of everyone in the world and say, wow, that's not my thing, is it? Don't hide it. Don't be afraid of it, because every other person out there has fallen on their face at least once. And nobody has done anything great in the world without having done that.
Okay, that's going to blow up in the Twittersphere when you say, I had never failed, and that was a very dangerous space to be in.
Oh, it's so scary, because then you're living your life out of fear. And I will tell you this, you're also living your life not for the joy of doing something great, but to avoid doing something bad.
So what you're saying is it was playing defense instead of offense. That is really a brilliant insight. Thanks for sharing that.
And so success was just relief that I didn't fail. And that's a miserable thing.
You should write a book on that alone. Hey, one follow-up question. If you could encourage some of the younger leaders who are listening to work on one aspect of their life, something maybe not in the time of crisis, but something that they can be working on continuously, little bit, day by day, that would help them in the long run, what area would you encourage them in?
Well, I mean, for me, if without faith, as a follower of Jesus, I would say that's the best investment you can make, because it's eternal, and that's where I get my peace. And that's where my ability to now be humble or to fail, I realize I'm okay with that. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing is just learn to be vulnerable. Celebrate the mistakes you make, and be that kind of person that's not afraid of that. It's attractive. It's attractive. Human beings smell desperation and false pride. Be the most raw person in the room. Not in a weird way, but in a way that's true to your personality. When people aren't afraid of failure, the things they do and the kind of people that are attracted to them are extraordinary. So get really comfortable being messy.
Well, what an outstanding interview. I couldn't be more thankful for today to be in the studio with one of my heroes. Patrick, thank you so much.
It's really a pleasure for me. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for today. To all the members of the tribe, I want to say thanks so much for being with us on this very special day. And be sure to jump on over to leadertribe.com, check out the freebies there, and join us next time for another Daily Dose of Growth.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Leader Tribe podcast. For all the free bonuses and growth articles, join the tribe. It's free. Just head on over to leadertribe.com to sign up, and we'll see you tomorrow for another Daily Dose of Growth.